Good morning. It's Tuesday, March 17th, 2015. This is Tech Talk Today, episode 145. My name is Chris, and it is the beginning of maybe a slow week. I'm not sure. Last week was definitely the Apple Watch wake. That's what I call it. After the big event, and it could be anybody, but this week it was Apple. They do a big event at the beginning of the week, and nobody else really does much. So now we could have some pent-up demand this week where people had things they were sitting on that didn't want to get caught up in that wake, and maybe they're going to release it this week. So what we're going to do is on Tuesday, we'll sort of clear out some of the stories that have developed today. Not a lot going on that I think is of very much relevance. There is a lot of rumor stories, but as far as concrete news goes, there's some interesting stuff, and also sort of a looking ahead story that could be signaling a major strategy shift for Nintendo. So we'll talk about that. So to start tearing through all of this stuff, why don't I bring in the Mumble Room? Time appropriate greetings, Mumble Room.
Time appropriate greetings.
Good morning.
Hey guys. All right. I'm an old man, I guess, because I not only remember when Internet Explorer launched, I remember when Internet Explorer was actually a pretty damn good browser, like around IE 3, 4, and 5. Like, well, maybe not 5. But there was a time when it was very competitive. So it's with a little bit of shock that I introduce our first story. Microsoft is killing off the Internet Explorer brand. This is pretty crazy. There's been hinted, but speaking at Microsoft Convergence yesterday, yes, that's a conference, Microsoft's marketing chief, Chris Casapapa, I believe that's how you say it, revealed that the company is currently working on a new name and brand. He says, we're now researching what a new brand or the new name for our browser should be in Windows 10. According to Casapapa, we continue to have Internet Explorer, but we'll also have a new browser called Project Spartan, which is codenamed Project Spartan. Interesting. We have to name the thing, he says. So it's going to exist in one form or another, but it won't be called IE10. Casapapa said that the use of branding has declined. IE branding has declined over the years, and they've done some user surveys, and now they're currently doing market research. So it's not sure when Microsoft will announce a new name, but say goodbye to Internet Explorer and say hello to something else that'll be, I'm sure, Comcastic or Xfinity, depending on your rebranding. What do you guys think? Is this going to do any good rebranding Internet Explorer? Is this sort of like calling Comcast no. Xfinity?
I doubt it'll do anything because it'll still most likely suck.
Yeah. Well,
as long as it's not named IE, hopefully it'll get rid of that, air of vulnerability that brand has.
Yeah, but here's the problem. All right, so, and this is coming right from, what was this guy's name again? Chris Capasasasasala. Here's the problem, as he points out. They're now going to have two browsers in Windows 10. One of them is just IE10 with lipstick, and then one of them is Spartan, Project Spartan. But they're both going to have totally different names by the time Windows 10 ships, and regular consumers are going to have no flipping idea which one is the browser that's based on like 15 years of code, and which one is sort of thrown together in the last release. And so how does that make any sense? And once again, it shows how Microsoft really has a hard time just sticking to one thing and committing to it, I think. But whatever. I mean, what do I know?
That sounds terrible. Two browsers on one OS? Yes, let's get twice the vulnerabilities. Come on.
Well, it's going to be very confusing. How are users going to know which one to use? Maybe it'll be clear once Windows 10 gets closer. Now, we've all lambasted Apple for their draconian app submission process to the Apple App Store for iOS. The constant reviews where humans have to go through every bit of line of code and run it, and they don't go through every bit of line of code. That's BS. But they run it, look at what it accesses, and try to monitor the API access, and spend a few seconds, and then they look for anything that might show some nudity and call it good. Right? Everybody hates this review process. In fact, one of the things that's been pointed at is one of the barriers to entry to the App Store is that review process. And in fact, it's something that the Android Play Store doesn't have. In fact, Google has been able to use technology to leverage the submission process to analyze apps, check them for malware, look at the APIs they use, and then automatically submit them to the Play Store. Now, this, of course, is because of Google's unbelievable engineering prowess. And pay no attention to the fact that Google Play apps will now be reviewed by humans, including app-based ratings, before they now make it to the App Store. In a huge reversal for how Google accepts apps to the Play Store, Google will now be instituting a human review policy for apps or for Play Store submissions. What do you guys think?
Why would they do that?
I don't know. I thought the whole point was that Google was so amazing with their algorithms and their engineerings and their server farms that they didn't have to do that quaint thing that Apple did and hire people. And it was, I mean, as far as I knew, and this is coming from somebody who likes Android, but as far as I knew, the party line was, haha, Apple's so draconian they have humans reviewing their apps, and Google you can get into the Play Store, and then eventually the process works itself out if there's somebody who has an issue. But then, earlier or mid last year, we saw Google institute real names and address policies on Google Play where developers' addresses actually get published to try to crack down on the copyright infringement, and then now this is another step in that. And I think as Android becomes more of a legitimate platform for purchasing things, Google has to get that Play Store sorted out. I wonder how
Also,
many
it'd be a good check on like how apps are done, because you can't necessarily test everything with the machine.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm just going through here to see if they say how many people they're going to be hiring. One of the things about the Apple review people is I guess they're actually based in California, which is pretty cool because it's probably several hundred U.S. jobs. I don't know where the Google review staff doesn't say here. They say they've already been doing it now for a little bit, and developers, wow, so they started doing this already and didn't tell developers, and they say developers haven't even noticed. They say the system also includes automated elements, so they're keeping some of the automated elements as well, and they're augmenting it with human review. Google didn't want to get into the specifics of what it's capable of in terms of automation, but notes that it can identify a number of violations beyond just malware. So you're going to have machine-aided and people. Probably exactly kind of how Apple does it, too. That's exactly what Apple does. And then also this TechCrunch article has more about the new age-based ratings, if you're a parent and want to read about that. I just thought that was a striking change in tone for Google.
And it does seem like a little bit of a step back in the sense of like how pioneering, or whatever word you want to use, Google are.
Is it pioneering to replace humans? Is that?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Didn't Google just prove that our technology isn't at a point where this is automatable, that we still need that human judgment?
I think human judgment is always going to be needed.
Wasn't this a pretty wide scale test of that? and Google, I mean, like, out of any company that's in Silicon Valley, if there's a company that can replace it with a script, it's Google, right? I mean, look how long they resisted starting a support center after they launched the Nexus devices. It took like a year after the first Nexus before they launched a support line staffed by humans. I think they got to be taken more. I think they have to be taken more seriously. I was reflecting on the fact that over the weekend, you guys hear about this Meerkat app, this live streaming thing that uses Twitter?
No.
Nope.
Yeah, boy, you guys are just not that hip, are you? So over the weekend in South by Southwest, this new live streaming service called Meerkat launched, and it's been huge. And it uses Twitter and all the commenting systems integrated with Twitter. You don't have to really create an account because it just authorizes to Twitter, blah, 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 blah. It's live streaming, it's iOS only, and it's blowing up like crazy. And the thing is, this is yet another app that's like going to South by Southwest that blows up, that goes huge and gets funding that is iOS only. And you got to figure the guys at Google are sitting there going, what the hell do we got to do to get people to do that on Android? We got way more phones. We've got great hardware. We've got all of this user base. Why is nobody taking advantage of that? And it's got to be because the general opinion amongst the development community is you can't make money off Android. We talk about stats all the time on Coder Radio about how developers make so much more money on iOS, and it's because of that Play Store. And they've got to also change the user base mentality and make the apps that are in there seem like they're worth money and more valuable. I'm not saying it's better for end users, but it's definitely better for Google and scoring those kind of exclusive launch things in the Play Store. And they if they want to be a platform contender, because otherwise, right now, if you want the best app platform, you get iOS. If you want the best tablet apps, you get an iPad, right? Now, of course, Android has lots of really competitive advantages, and so you'll go get Android for a lot of other reasons, and there's lots of reasons not to choose iOS for a lot of people. But if it came down to just one choice, one thing to make your choice, and it was the quality and selection of apps, iOS wins, and I don't think even the most hardcore Android fan would argue that. The apps are just better on iOS. A lot of that has to do with the built-in resources on the iOS platform, but another lot of that has to do is that's where developers are willing to spend the time because that's where they make their money back. And with the Android side, it's often sort of a second thought. You look how long it took Instagram to come over to Android, or lots of apps. I mean, I don't have to go rattle them all off. You guys know, and Google's got to change that. And it's interesting to see the way they're doing that is they're just going to be a little more like Apple. Well, the guys make a lot of money. I guess it makes sense. Twomp, did you want to say anything before I move on?
Well, it's just that it's you hear people that don't know much about the mobile industry, and they go, "Well, Android, that's where you get those free apps."
Yes,
it's not the case. I mean, it can be the case, but
I've also heard the line. Well, I pay $30 a month for my data plan. For my smartphone plan, I shouldn't have to pay for any apps. That's what I've heard that line, and they got a free phone.
It's not the same way with Linux.
Yeah,
I don't pay for Linux, so I have a wallet.
Well, kind of along the same lines, probably not too surprising to anybody who's worked in IT support. There's been a new analysis. People who use Firefox or Chrome make better employees. Yeah. So, of course, this is coming from an on-demand report. A company that sells software that helps employees recruit and retain workers has found that analyzing data on about 50,000 workers who took 45-minute online job assessments, the people who took the test on the non-default browser, like Firefox or Chrome, ended up staying at their jobs about 15% longer than those who stuck with Safari or Internet Explorer. They also tended to perform better on the job as well. Chief Analytics Officer offered up an explanation of the results in an interview with Freakonomics Radio, which I think is available in podcast if you guys want to find it. I think the fact that they took time to install Firefox on your computer shows something about you. It shows that you're someone who is an informed consumer. You've made an active choice to do something that wasn't the default. But why would a company care about something as seemingly trivial as a browser candidate choice? Well, call centers are estimated to suffer from turnover rate of about 45% annually, and it can cost thousands of dollars to hire new employees. Boy, isn't that true? Because of that, companies are eager to find out ways to proxy for talent and dedication and find out who's dedicated. I don't know if I buy that last part, but I do buy that people who use Firefox or Chrome are probably a little more computer savvy, and just that level of awareness probably means that they're not clicking on every attachment that comes in. They're maybe a little bit better about phishing scam emails. Like they just have that little bit more knowledge level a lot of times. Not every time, but I have definitely noticed the users where I go to sit down at their computer and they prefer to have Chrome or Firefox, they generally have a much better handle on what's going on at their computer.
Or it shows they care.
Yeah,
just slightly.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting. The defaults have changed, and Chrome is so popular. All right, although Safari seems to be pretty popular on the Mac, and I don't know if you don't really need a web browser with any bells and whistles, like really, Safari's not that bad. Like it's just a WebKit browser. So I mean, there could be reasons I don't like it, but. I mean, I guess I really can't say. I've never used Safari that long, so I don't know if it's horrible.
It's a contender.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's WebKit. Like, it's got to be at least. I mean, it can do whatever. It's going to do whatever WebKit can do, and that's going to bring you a lot of stuff. I mean, that's going to give you a lot of things. All right, so that'll wrap us up today. There's a lot of things we could talk about, like that new Apple TV service that the Wall Street Journal is rumoring is going to launch in the fall again, or we could talk about all of the mini rumors that go every single day. But I think we'll just keep it right there. We'll keep it focused on the stuff that kind of seems to matter, and we'll just do that for a little while, even if that means a short show. So that way, when you're tuning in, you're not going to hear about a bunch of crap. You're going to hear about the news stories that seem to matter that day. And I'm hoping that a little more stuff will break free now that the week's picked up and the Apple Watch event is over. Before we wrap up, just two quick plugs. You guys know we're raising funds for Linux Fest Northwest. In fact, that's pretty much what I'm doing all the time now when I'm off air is working this. Oh, man. By the time Linux Fest Northwest gets here, I'm going to need a vacation. It is, or at least blow off some steam at the after party. That's what I'll tell you what. That's what I'll be doing because it is a lot of work, but we have so much fun. And you can help us with the effort by going to teespring.com/Linux. We've sold 135 towards our goal of 150 shirts. We have 13 days, 10 hours left. Grab as many as you can because we'd love to sell a couple of hundred to help fund travel expenses for the Jupiter Broadcasting crew that we want to bring out. Now, a lot of you are kind of swagged out. And that's totally understandable. And so you've opted to kick in over at our Patreon. We're at 470, and I really appreciate that because not only will this help fund our Linux Fest Northwest initiatives, but future Linux Fest initiatives too. And the higher this number goes, the less we have to depend on the swag fund raising, which I love that as well. And of course, these are very expensive endeavors, but it's my mission to try to shine a little more light on this aspect of the open source community, these fests. And it's not just Linux ones we're talking about either. We're talking about some of the BSD ones as well. And the reason I think we need to do that is it's sort of a fundamental component of how open source software works. What is so fundamentally different than the way commercial software works. Like, there's a thing such as big companies that are rich, like Apple. And then there's this entirely other thing that happens at this community, human level that where profits don't matter and marketing doesn't matter, and it's human-to-human connections, and they're talking about software and technology, and that is it's a kind of connection that transcends all of that. And to be able to document how that happens and why it's why that makes open source and community fundamentally so much different than commercial software development, to document even just a little hint of that and put that out there, I think is good, not just for the history of open source and Linux to get that in a show that is fairly popular, but like the Linux Action Show, but also just so that we can see it as participants. And your funding over at Patreon is going to help us continue to do that. Patreon.com/today. I will also be releasing more behind-the-scenes videos soon. I've just been super doubled down on Linux Fest Northwest, and I kind of keep hoping that I'm going to talk Noah into flying out here in a couple of weeks, and then I want to do some behind-the-scenes videos. We post those on the Patreon activity feed, and if you haven't subscribed yet, go over there now. We have different levels all the way up to Swag Club levels, and you get access to the activity feed, and you'll get access to all of the previous behind-the-scenes videos at patreon.com/today. Now, before we end the show, I had one kind of like, wow, holy crap story I wanted to touch on. And it was brought to my attention by the chat room this morning, and that is that Nintendo has made a huge announcement. They're going to start making smartphone games. And if you've been following Nintendo even loosely over the last few years, they have been adamant that the secret success to Nintendo is the combination of software and hardware together, and that if you broke those two things apart, you would lose the Nintendo secret sauce, and therefore they will never do it. They care too much about the quality of the gaming experience. But today, the company has announced that it will team up with DENA, a major Japanese mobile gaming company, to make smartphone games featuring Nintendo characters. The two companies intend to jointly operate a new gaming applications featuring Nintendo IP, which they will develop specifically for smart devices, according to a Nintendo statement. Although the games will leverage Nintendo properties, they will not be ports of our favorite Nintendo games. To ensure the quality of the game, they say, and the experience of the game that consumers expect from the alliance of Nintendo and DNA, only new games optimized for smart devices will be created, rather than porting games created for the Wii U or home consoles, 3DS, etc. To further emphasize this point, Nintendo also stated they're not giving up on dedicated systems. They say they're working on a new console right now, codenamed Nintendo NX, with a whole brand new concept. Nintendo and DNA will also be developing a cross-platform online service that runs across smartphones, tablets, PCs, and of course, Nintendo consoles. That seems good. That should be in the fall of this year if they get all that pulled off. Nintendo is also taking a 10% stake in DENA, while DENA is buying 1.2% of Nintendo. This is huge. Now, what do you guys think about the fact that these aren't going to be like, this isn't going to be your Metroid or your Zelda or your Mario. This might be like a new game that features Nintendo characters, and here I hope it's not this. Even though it was kind of cool when Angry Birds did the Star Wars Angry Birds, and it was essentially Angry Birds in the Star Wars universe, it was actually kind of fun. I do not see that working with Nintendo characters. You know, picture Mario Angry Birds kind of thing, or Flappy Yoshi. You know, what do you guys think? Is this a bomb? Does it need to be your classic Nintendo games, or would they not work on a touch device?
I don't think classic Nintendo games would work on a touch device. It has to be entirely something new, and it can't be something that's controller intensive, because games like Smash Brothers, which is really popular, came to the 3DS this past year, and a lot of people had problems with the hardware because it would just, you button mash so hard on that game, it would just break your 3DS. So it's really interesting to see what the title will be, considering most iPhone games are pretty much either really easy or they're really bad ports that eventually come out on something else.
Yeah. I mean, the chat room seems to think this is going to be the slow death of consoles. This is the beginning of the end for Nintendo. And you do have to wonder, Nintendo is sort of, they have a really good ability to look forward in the console space and kind of see where things are going. And I wonder if Nintendo's doing this, is this a sign that the smartphone and the tablet and all that is going to slowly replace the console? If it does, and sort of chews away at that mid-range console, that does leave some space at the high end for the Steam machines, which would be interesting.
If I could chime in.
Yeah.
I mean, consoles are consoles, and I think the slow death of consoles is directly related to themselves. I mean, they're just inferior to a PC in most ways. You know, it used to be, I want to sit on the couch. I don't want to sit at the desk. And now with tablets and smartphones and smart TVs and all this, it's not so much about the couch. I'm already on the couch with my PC or my other operating system. So I don't think the consoles themselves are really in fear of much. I think they're going to die at the same rate they're going to die. I think, however, bringing these IPs to another platform, as long as they still have their NX or their next project, I think the IPs is what people are after. I like seeing my Donkey Kong, and I like sitting at the bus stop with my phone while I do it.
Don't they have to nail? I mean, the sound's got to be just right. The characters have to look just right. There's so much you have to nail that if it's not by the hand of Nintendo developers, it seems like it'd be really hard to get it right.
Besides the aesthetics, like you're saying, there is the fact, like I think WWNSX was saying, the physical strain on these handheld devices, like the Nintendo 3DS, it was too much for some of these games where all you're doing is jamming buttons like an arcade game.
Yes.
You know, you don't have a whole machine. You're standing in front jamming away at the buttons and grinding the joystick.
In fact, that is, not to cut you off, but that brings us to our end of show clip so perfectly that we should probably transition right to there because they're about to they'll demonstrate exactly what you're talking about. So
perfect.
If you have any thoughts on Nintendo's transition, go to techtalktoday.reddit.com and start a thread there, and maybe the other folks listening can jump in and we'll cover that later this week. That'd be great too. If the news is slow, I'd love to talk about this more with you guys. So the subreddit's a great place to engage with the show, even if you can't be here live. If you could be here live, join us 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern over at jblive.tv, jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. To get that in your local time zone, you can hang out in our mumble room, in the chat room, help title the show, all that goodness. So, kind of a big announcement from Nintendo. So let's ponder one of my favorite Nintendo games. One I don't even care if the UI isn't that great. I would love to play it on my smart device. And if it doesn't just totally demonstrate how you gotta mash buttons when you're playing these games, I don't know what will. We'll see you back here tomorrow, everybody. Enjoy.
The challenge is Metroid. The power is Nintendo. Defend the planet Xephus against the evil Mother Brain. It's survival or destruction. Do battle or die. Metroid only from Nintendo. Play Rad Racer. Play with power. It's turbo speed in 3D. It's treacherous tracks, hot cars, hairpin turns. One mistake and you'll roll. Rad Racer only from Nintendo. Now you're playing with power.